WFH with two guys. Now here's Benny and Dennis.
There's a certain time in any business owner's life where you're going to run up into some type of ceiling and you can't really get to that next level, or maybe you're just having difficulty seeing things. It's really hard to really understand everything when it comes to your business objectively, isn't it?
It is. And then, but usually you're good at something you're doing. And when you're starting a business, you're good at it. But as the business begins to grow, there's areas that either you're not strong in or you need help. And so you'll either turn internally and hire people, or many, especially small to mid-sized businesses, will turn to coaches. Unfortunately, a lot of owners are skeptical of working with coaches. And so our topic today is, why do you need a coach and what do you do with a coach? And so I think, that's an important question because there's benefits to having a coach, but lots of people look at it from a negative perspective.
Today we have Jim Cripps, who is the managing partner over at Charge Forward and co-founder over at Sense Development. I'll tell you, I really enjoyed this particular podcast, just the conversation we had. This was a guest we've had on before, and I learned so much on this. I took a lot of notes. But this is going to be a really interesting one, especially for you all. Maybe we're going through a little bit of trying times right now, or need to have a different perspective. This is really a good episode for you.
There's one statement he made that I thought was great in the thing, that if you're going through a tough time, speed up and get through the damn thing. Don't sit there and wait for it. And so listen to the whole podcast because there's just lots of great tidbits and thoughts and points. And at the end, he kind of has a treat for what he's done that is unique and different if you don't know about Jim. So listen to the whole thing.
Dennis, it probably like me, you probably were encouraged to play a lot of sports growing up. And I know that even though there are some my classmates and people that I were naturally gifted. I was not a super talented athlete, but we all got better when we had some guidance and we had some coaching. And even no matter how much God-given talent we've been given, we still need somebody to help us with that. And I think it's sports, it's an easy thing to think of. But people who own businesses, they don't think about it the same way. They don't really look at it that same way.
Right. No, I come across, some business owners, some have coaches and work with them. And I've got many that, have a negative connotation of bringing someone in to give them guidance or helping them. And I think, I personally think they're wrong, but, hey, that's their opinion. Because I think we're all good in some things, but there's always ways to make it better. And I think your analogy with sports, I was in marching band. I mean, we'd have a director and then they'd have 25 different people that were experts on percussion and color guard and all this different stuff that they would help coach the group and also coach individual people that either needed to grow and get up to standard or take the ones that were really good to the next level. And I think if you think of it that way, coaching is a really, really important part of what happens in the business world today.
Yeah. And so today, Jim, by the way, thank you for coming on today's podcast. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Jim was on with us back in 2023. So it's been a while since Jim's been here. And Jim, thanks for jumping back on with us.
Yeah,
sure. Glad to be back.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the idea of coaching. And if I'm a business owner, a driver within my company, why is it important for us to have coaches?
Well, you touch on a really key piece there just a second ago when you said that a lot of people are hesitant in order to bring in a coach. And I think that's derived from anybody can label themselves as a coach. But the reality is, what have you done? If we look at sports, well, the guy that used to play ball that now coaches, that translates, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in the business world, there's so many people out there that call themselves a coach, but they haven't done it. And I think that really kind of comes from university in that you've got professors that have studied, but maybe haven't put it into practice. And I think in the business world, especially, you need someone who has been through what you need to go through. So they're more of a guide as much as they're a coach on what to do, how to think, and what problems are going to come next. And so, Jack Daly has a great quote, and it is, that most little league sports are run better than most businesses. And he's not wrong there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because if you think about it, you know from day one, you as a parent, you got that kid in Little League, you want to know who's the coach. What is he like? You're probably going to call some friends that had kids that played before. Hey, do you know this guy?
Mm-hmm.
What's he about? Is he teaching fundamentals? Is he teaching ethic? All those things. But yet you got all these business coaches out here that haven't been through it, haven't done it. And sometimes they'll hire one just because it's their buddy or because somebody said so, and they don't do any research.
Mm-hmm.
And me personally, I've had a very unique experience, and I'm proud to have had that. I took a company from $6 million, so single-digit millions, through the double digits, and the last 3 years we were in triple digits. And so that's an evolution. The same type of coach most often doesn't have that type of experience. And I'm very upfront with people. And if they've got a startup, I can give you some generalizations, but I'm not the startup guy. That's not me. And a lot of coaches will just jump in there and they haven't specialized. They don't have it what it is that they actually do enough to, in my opinion, to be ethical enough or to have that to distance and say, you know what, you actually need this guy or this group or this girl that is going to get you from that startup phase until you're making money or, to that growth target. So, I'm not the startup guy.
And a lot of them, they'll think they've got to go with that coach from single digits to double digits to triple digits. And I've seen where they've spent lots of money and they don't get there. I mean, so there's different coaches for different lanes and different specialties of where you're going.
Absolutely. And if we go back to the sports analogy, if you think about it, most often the guys that are coaching Little League are not the same guys that are coaching high school or not the same guys that are coaching college, not the same guys that are coaching professional.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Saban. I mean, great at college, went and did professional and was not his area and came back to Alabama after spending time at Miami because that was not where he was the right coach.
And it's not to say that he couldn't become that because somebody like Nick Saban, I think they can, but at the same time, I think just naturally, God made him somebody that could connect with, as men are becoming, they're crossing over from adolescent to adults, that could really grab a hold of those guys and get them to understand how they were supposed to grow into this role and really growing them as people. That's one of the things, I did when I was running that company is I taught every person in the company every single month in person. So 2.5 weeks out of every month, I spent in the field actually coaching people on what we were going to do, how we were going to do it, and to make sure that everybody understood their role. And a lot of people would say, you're wasting your time out there in the field, or that's not the best use of your resource being you. And I really do think it was the opposite. The reason we grew so fast, we were Nashville's fastest growing company in 2017 and 2018. I came in second in 2019 and number 9 in 2020. And I don't think that would have happened. It didn't happen before that. And it really took everybody that was there knowing their role. And that's missing in a lot of companies. And it's one of the things that a lot of coaches miss, not trying to blast anybody, but they don't emphasize how critical that is. But if we look at sports teams, everybody on Nick Saban's team knew what their role was in them getting to a victory on the weekend.
Right. I mean, everyone's not the quarterback. Everyone knew that if you're a defense, you're on defense. You didn't get to play offense and stick your nose in there and tell offense how to run the plays.
That's right. And at the same time, your sports teams have specialized coaches. Right? You've got an offensive line coach. You've got a defense coach. You got a special teams coach. And I'm not saying that everybody out there needs 5 different coaches, but I do think you need to use that lens to say, me as an owner, I may need a different coach than the people that are in my organization. And so, a lot of times even if it's the same coach, there's a different message that's going to the executive leadership team than it is maybe to the owner or the board of directors. And I think you kind of have to have that in stages. And then depending upon the size of your company, it very well may be that you need to hire, train, and really dive in with whoever's going to be the coach on your team. Who is that in your ranks that can get that message across? Or does it need to be you? Now, some people, I will say this, a lot of times an owner is not the right person to deliver that. But then you may have somebody on your team, if you're fortunate enough to have ever come across this person and hired them and hopefully treated them the way you needed to in order to keep them. There are people out there that will run a company, treat a company, have the work ethic as if they owned it. And that's a lot of times, that's who you want in front of your people, driving the mission, making sure that everybody knows their role. And like I say, that can be internal, whereas you and that person may need a coach to make sure you're on the same page, to make sure goals are aligned, to be looking forward into what problems are going to come up when we go through this next growth phase or when we go through this type of revenue, threshold.
It sounds to me like when as I'm listening to you, talk about this, a sales coach can be an integral part of your business, not only from just giving, helping you coach get the best out of you and your team, but also can help you see and move you in the proper direction. And it sounds like this is something that we should be looking in very deeply. And I remember this very 20 years ago. There was I was in a networking group, and there was this person who was booking themselves as a sales coach, but she had just graduated from college, had no sales practical experience whatsoever. And I don't think anyone took her seriously just because of that. And she never really was able to kind of get to the areas that I think she was potentially. Probably now is she would probably be an excellent coach because she had that type of personality, but didn't have the experience. And so it's really a vetting thing too, isn't it, Jim? You really need to understand where this coach is going to fit in your organization, if he or she fits in your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. It's got to be a good fit. They also, one of the most important things about being a coach is they've got to be able to deliver the tough message. A lot of times people in your organization, because they're employees, they're not bold enough to tell you the tough thing that you as the owner or you as the manager or the leader might be wrong. And your coach has to do that. In fact, a lot of times, I'll tell somebody as a consultant, I would not be doing my job if I did not tell you this is the wrong path. And, I just a few years ago, I did have a client that didn't speak to me for 4 weeks. It upset them that much. And then they came back around, and, it was kind of one of those things. It was like, I needed to hear that. I wasn't ready to hear that. And then a couple things happened that made me see why you told me that.
This is perfect because I a couple of people that I know personally, their images are popping in my head. And this goes back to the original thing that you and Dennis were talking about. We have these egos in our head. Like the reason they don't want to hire the coaches. I'm talking to you guys out there who are listening to this podcast right now. You better be listening to what I'm saying. You need to put your ego aside. And it is a beautiful thing for you to be able to have someone to tell you that you're making the stupidest mistake because you're number 2 or number 3, because they're reliant upon you for their livelihood and their benefits. They're not going to tell you what you need to hear. You need to have somebody who doesn't have that vested interest, or really, for all intents and purposes, really care what you think about them. I think that's a beautiful sentiment right there.
Well, one of the things that I think is nice in theory but doesn't work is sometimes somebody out there will hear this message, right? And they go back to their team and they say, you know what? I want to hear the truth. But the problem is people have seen that play out before.
And then Bob gives the truth and gets fired a week later. And so it's like, I'm not going to give the truth now because I know I might be fired.
Yeah, and that's just human nature in general, in that the person that reports to you, you have an idea of how that's supposed to work. And unless you have fostered that type of environment where they can tell you the truth, and this is one of those trust things that gets built over time. Unless you can trust that person is telling the truth when they say they want the truth, and you've got this history of being able to tell the truth, and at the same time, if you're the employee, you have to be trustworthy in that when you say the truth, it's not filled with emotion. And so, whether we're talking about a relationship, a personal relationship or a business relationship, etc., a lot of times the way to do that is to kind of not put them on the defensive in saying, make it an I statement. In that, I'm having trouble seeing the vision, or I'm having trouble understanding how this process gets us to our goal, versus, you put this out there and it's not working, Jim. It puts that person on the defensive. So
this is where you can use ChatGPT to type it in and say, "Hey, make it where it's a softer message before I go." Because we have lots of. I mean, you might want to type it into ChatGPT and have a couple different messages before you, because these are important things that you may want to have it written down as you say it. But to your point, it's more from. It's not how you feel, but it's factual, or it's about what you're experiencing, because then it changes the tone. Because now if I'm a manager, you're having the problem. It's not you're making me the problem. It's you're having the problem, and I can help you. I can be that coach to help you see that vision or see the role that you play in this process. Or if we go back to sports, why you need to block the person coming from the blind side better than you were, because the quarterback's about ready to get his noggin killed because he doesn't see what's coming at him.
Yeah, and people that grew up in sports are much more open to that direct feedback. So if you know that about your leader, or if you know that about people in your executive team or on your team, then that is an easier conversation. They're used to getting direct feedback, and they know that it is for their development. They have been trained through the fact that they've had multiple coaches that don't have time to powder their behind and make sure that they feel good about the message that's coming across. And that's not meant to belittle anybody that didn't grow up in sports, but that type of person is used to being coached in that type of way. And as a leader, one of the first things that you can do, in my opinion, to circumvent a little bit of that is ask somebody how they like to be coached. They may or may not be able to answer that right off. You may have to give them some time to answer that. And so it's this constant dance of, us working back and forth in order to really work together. And so I'm a big fan of the DISC profile and, knowing what somebody's emotional IQ is and those types of things, because it just helps us better understand each other. And
So kind of stepping back, again, for those business owners, as you can tell, all three of us believe coaching is well worth the time and effort. The question is why. And so, and the other one is to think through, don't just because you meet someone in a networking group or your best friend says, oh, this is the right coach. You need to do some research. I love your analogy about Little League, because if my kid's really good at baseball, I'm not going to just put him in the Little League team that's in my town. I may shop around for the team that's the most competitive because it's got the better coach. Because he's good at hitting, but he's horrible at he's struggling at fielding, that if he could just get that fielding part down, he's going to become a superstar. That mentality, that applies to your business approach as well. And I think that's why we have a lot of people that I come across have negative connotations about coaches, because a lot of times, Benny, it's to your point, it's that person that just graduated from college that says they're a coach. Yeah, they have the title, but they don't really have any experience. They're like an assistant coach at a Division III school that, may work their way up someday, but it doesn't mean you can't work with them. Just be prepared. You may not get the results that you would have gotten if you went to someone closer to a Nick Saban level.
Well, a lot of times too, it comes down to what the person costs, right? And you're going to pay for it either in time or in money or in hard knocks. And so a lot of times the coach is the one that helps you avoid those painful problems or better navigate them to get through them faster. I forget who it is that said, if you're going through hell, speed up. And a coach really can do that if they've been through that before.
Yeah.
And so, figure out what your time's worth. Figure out, what it would be like if your company was, years ahead of where they are today, and how quick can you get there?
And I think identify those areas you want to focus on, because maybe it's, my group needs more ways to work more as a team, or it's, I need help with marketing. Well, that's a totally different coach than one over the other. Or that I need help using AI. So it's a coach that helps us figure out how to use the AI more effective. It's whatever it is, narrow down in and kind of hire those assistant coaches, because many times you are the coach for your team. You're the Nick Saban of your team. You may be good, but you need some assistance either internally that you've hired as employees, or you've hired as an analyst, I'll use sports analysis, that is there for a short period of time and then, goes away after some effort or whatever that task or focus is that you're doing. But, the why is it makes an impact and should change the trajectory of wherever you're going, either to increase sales, decrease cost. There's only two things you can do to make more money. You got to increase sales or decrease costs. There's not a lot more you can do besides that.
Well, one of the things kind of walking through that process is you've got to be ready for some pain. And, so going back to our little league analogy, when the hitting coach is helping you correct your swing, that's an adjustment. That doesn't feel natural. I swing this way. Well, he's a hitting coach for a reason. He knows how to optimally hit, for you to swing. And so a lot of times somebody will hire a coach thinking it's going to be amazing and rosy and everything's going to be beautiful. And as soon as they hit that little bit of pain in that they're telling me to do something I don't want to do, you really have to lean back on the fact that the reason they're telling you that is for your benefit. This is all for you to help you get where you're trying to go. And so don't expect every day to be easier because you have a coach. There are days that are going to be harder because they're trying to get you to understand the fundamentals that are going to get you where you're trying to go.
The other thing I would say too, if you're hiring a coach, they're going to be there with you for a period of time. Schedule them to come back every 3, 6, 9 months for a checkup, because again, a lot of this is human nature. That I learned I bat one way, I go hire a coach and I get better, but it's easier to do it the old way. So I navigate back to the old way and bad habits begin to develop. And so having that coach come through periodically and just do some key checkpoints to make sure that you haven't deviated back, because human nature is going to kick in and you're going to deviate back if you're not careful.
Yeah, it really takes enough time with a coach to adopt a little bit of a different mentality, because you got to fix that swing permanently. And you got years of this is how I do it. The other thing too, sometimes that is challenging for business owners is they have the story that they want to tell. And sometimes they have to tell a different story first. And so I'm reminded, I've got some great friends that, have a new business, and the story they want to tell is too in depth that they can't really connect with people yet with it. And I said, so you tell the story that somebody can absorb, that is the truth, but maybe it's not the thing you're most passionate about, but it's the thing that's passionate enough to get them to your storefront or to start doing business with you. Then you've built rapport, and now you can have the conversation of what makes you passionate about it. But you got to tell the story that allows them to start transacting with you first.
Jim, this is a topic that I think I could really go to town on, and really there's so much here that I want to ask you, but I realize we're a little bit limited in terms of some of the time, and we could just talk to you for hours, but there are going to be people out there who definitely want to talk to you. They need some help. Maybe want to talk to somebody who has a little bit of experience. What's the best for them to be able to get a hold of you?
I actually have my own podcast, and that just launched earlier this month. So we're on episode 4, and that's the Charge Forward podcast. It's available on YouTube and obviously all the major platforms. My email is jim@chargeforwardsolutions. or Jim@Sense Custom Development. And then you could always give me a call. My number is 615-268-5627.
And Jim, let's tell them what magazine were you on and what's your claim to fame? This is kind of cool, people.
Yeah, so one of the things that some of you may know about me and some of them may not, I joke with people and say that you either know me from the guy that's been on the cover of the Business Journal a couple times, or the guy that has been on the cover of the Bowler's Journal. And so I have the only 300 bowled backwards. So I did not mistake there. I really do throw the ball behind me, and it's exactly as weird as you think it would be.
So if you need a coach that you want to learn how to bowl backwards, Jim has the experience to coach you on that one. So just take that one to heart and understand not everyone can bowl, but not everybody can bowl backwards. So Jim, thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Great to be here with you guys.
Thanks, Jim. We appreciate it. Small pool to pick from, so Jim's going to be your guy.
That's
Thanks
right.
again. All right. Well, Dennis, that's another podcast in the can. I know that a lot of you all want to know how to get in touch with us. Dennis, what's the best way for folks to be able to get a hold of you?
Yeah, email's by far the best for me. It's Dennis J, so DENNISJ @worksolution.com, and that's WORX solution, no S at the end, so solution.com. Benny, how about you?
Yeah, same thing. Get a hold of me. My email address is benny@velocitytechnology.group. That's BENNY @velocitytechnology.group. Also, for me and Dennis, you can find us on LinkedIn. Look for us on LinkedIn. Our Work From Home with Two Guys is on LinkedIn. And we also have a website, WFH2guys.com. Look us up. You'll find all the past episodes and some little bits of information that maybe we don't get a chance to talk to on the podcast. We put it out there too as well.
And definitely share us with your friends and people in your network.
Absolutely. Let us know what we can do to make this podcast your podcast. Give us some ideas. If you'd like to be a guest, let us know. We'll talk to you guys soon.
You've been listening to WFH with Two Guys. We'll see you next time.